Welcome back to Cooking and Kids. In today's episode, we are continuing with our travels through New Zealand. This time, we are taking you to the North Island and to the city of Russell. We'll explore about its origin, the people who initially lived in this town, their culture, their way of life, and then we're going to touch up on the nature around this beautiful town. Russell is located in the Bay of Islands, far north in New Zealand. The area was discovered by Europeans in early 1800s. In this episode, we'll talk about the old way of life in Russell prior to Europeans, and then we'll touch up on the era after 1800s. Sailing is a must in Russell, so we're going to do our share of sailing and we're going to finish the episode with one of our favorite recipes. Our day begins by leaving Auckland and we are heading north. If you followed our past episodes from New Zealand, you'll notice that North Island scenery is a bit different than South Islands. It rained so much that we decided to make a couple of quick stops. And I'm very glad we did, because on one of those stops we got to see these unique birds. Tui birds are one of the most playful animals in New Zealand. They are beautiful singers and they can mimic all kinds of sounds. They were very close to extinction due to pests, but now, luckily, they are making comeback. Our next stop is city of Whangarei. A town known for its waterfall and 100 beaches also hosts a national clock museum. While coastal living is a focal point of the city is also known for its beautiful Hundertwasser Art Center. The building itself is erected to celebrate Frederick Hundertwasser and his life and legacy in New Zealand. Austrian-born artist, architect, and conservationist Frederick Hundertwasser first visited New Zealand in 1973, and he bought land in the Bay of Islands 3 years later. He was already well known in Europe for his conservation beliefs and quirky architecture, and it didn't take long before he began applying his art and ideas in New Zealand. This building is a rare opportunity to experience and celebrate architecture in harmony with different cultures and the nature itself. That was a great visit, but we are now pressing on further north to Russell. As we arrived to our destination, there was another major pour. But shortly, all the clouds cleared up and the weather could not be more beautiful and peaceful. We are off to our boat to get some good night rest because tomorrow we are sailing to Russell. As we enter the town of Russell, its gates clearly speak of its origins. This charming town is a perfect base for exploring the Bay of Islands. Until early 1800s, the area was exclusively occupied by Maori people. However, after first European ships arrived, Russell quickly became a safe place to sailors, whalers, and traders, as well as deserting seamen, runaway convicts, and all sorts of other people who needed a hideaway. Russell holds a very important place in New Zealand's history, being the country's first seaport, its first European settlement, and New Zealand's first capital. Once a safe place where merchants could mix with adventurers, deserters, and escaped convicts from Australia, today Russell offers peace, beauty, and quiet to its travelers. To find out more about the Russell's history and the importance of it in formation of New Zealand as a country, we're going to visit a local museum. Before the arrival of the Europeans, the area known as Russell was inhabited by Maori people. The area provided abundance of food, fish, and fertile soil. Traces of Maori history and its prosperity can be easily found in a number of the artifacts displayed at the museum. Numerous displays tell a story of an early Maori life. There are a number of artifacts related to everyday living, as they are those dedicated to special celebrations. Maori culture was tightly intertwined with the nature around them and the creatures living in the sea and on the land. Living in harmony with the nature drastically changed as Europeans arrived to the area. The richness of natural resources was a great attraction to European settlers and adventurers who came from around the world. Fishing was one of the major industries in Russell during late 1800s to late 1900s, which made a great impact on the sea life in the area. From their first arrival in New Zealand, Europeans brought animals such as pigs for food, or accidentally such as rats. This was the beginning of a new period of extinctions and range reductions for native animals, such as kiwis. Immigrants brought new animals, crop, plants, parasites, but they also brought new diseases. Aside from convicts escaping from Australia or deserting sailors seeking asylum with Maori tribes, the first Europeans in New Zealand were in search of profits. Many ships, both from America and Europe, came to Russell to trade with the local tribes. Small wooden boats were quickly replaced by massive ships. During 1800s, several hundred sailing ships brought tens of thousands of immigrants from Europe to New Zealand. The ships were generally around 600 tons and could carry between 150 to 250 passengers. By late 1800s, ships grew to over 2,000 tons and could carry up to 500 passengers. A lot of change was coming to New Zealand, and one of the biggest and most significant was the arrival of the Captain James Cook. Most Europeans who arrived on these shores in this period were here to exploit the country's natural resources, seals and whales, the timber, flax, and fisheries. In 1839, the peak year for New Zealand's whaling, approximately 200 whale ships were working in New Zealand waters. Once hunting for food with the small homemade hooks was soon replaced with more industrious weapons, strictly hunting for profit. Newly acquired wealth and private interests suddenly needed better protection. A number of these weapons are still displayed at the museum today. Our next stop is New Zealand's oldest surviving church. Christ Church was built in 1835 and originally held services in both English and Maori. According to official records, the first service was held on January 3rd of 1836. Each row of seats in this church is decorated with hand embroidery, featuring local flowers, local birds, boats, and sea life. I wonder if these were done to welcome Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip when they visited the church in 1963. In any case, they are beautiful, and I will let you enjoy them for a moment. During early 1800s, Russell was also known as a hellhole of the Pacific. Among the graves in the churchyard are those of early dignitaries and men from HMS who fell in battle, and a number of whalers whose headstones often tell of untimely deaths. We had a great day of exploring today, but now it's time to return to the boat, to make some dinner and to get some good night rest, because we are going back tomorrow to discover more about New Zealand's first town called Russell. It's the early next morning and our first stop is a coffee shop. Our next stop is the Duke of Marlborough, or simply the Duke, as it is affectionately known in Russell. From the very beginning, the building was on a mission to bring some respect, elegance, and opulence to the hellhole of the Pacific. It was even named after the richest man in the world at that time. After visiting with the Duke, we are off to visit an important historical site. North of Russell is a Flagstaff Hill overlooking the Bay of Islands. To get there, there is an uphill hike of about 35 minutes through a local forest. Towering above the township is Maiki Hill, topped by a flagstaff. Between 1844 and 1845, the flagstaff was cut down 4 times by Maori people in protest against British government. This led to war between Maori and newly established government. The records suggest that Flagstaff originally was a gift from Honeheke to James Busby, the first British resident. During the conflict, Honeheke challenged the British authority by cutting the flagstaff on a Flagstaff Hill. From beautiful hills around Russell in New Zealand to beautiful hills of Temecula in California. I'm taking you with us to my hometown of Temecula on this cold and rainy day, which is perfect for our recipe today. For the boat was delicious, especially because the evening was cool. So having the warm bowl of soup on a cool evening on the open water was just the right thing. So in today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make a very healthy and hearty vegetable soup. I think we all should be eating more spoon foods like soups and stews. And this recipe should be simple enough so that all of you kids can make it with your family. One thing we know for sure is that good soup starts with good broth. We have a couple of options here, and one is we make our own, or if you don't have time for that, you can buy store-bought beef broth. Both would work well. I prefer to make my own, especially on a cold and rainy days like today is. I have all kinds of goodies, and I'm gonna use a little bit of everything. You can use almost any vegetables, but usually broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, and zucchini work the best. So let the fun begin. We're gonna start with a deep pot, some olive oil, and chopped carrots, onions, and celery. To all the parents out there, this is a perfect job for your kids to do with the little training knives. You will notice that there are two steps in cooking vegetables. First, it's the carrots, celery, and onion, which we are going to saute and cook a little longer. And then rest of the vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, mushrooms, and zucchini, we're gonna pre-cut and leave it towards the end of the soup. We'll saute these vegetables until they get nice and soft and preferably golden brown. While that's cooking, we're gonna pre-cut zucchini and some of the other vegetables. When I was a kid, my mom and grandma would often tell me to think about what I'm doing and to plan it and organize it in a way that I can be more efficient and that I can do my job better. And I would suggest the same to you. Green beans tend to take longer, so we're gonna add them to the onions, celery, and carrots. Vegetables, we're going to try to get these onions golden brown. That's when their flavor is the best and they're the sweet. With the green beans in, let's work on a cauliflower and broccoli. These veggies are full of good energy and all sorts of minerals and vitamins, and they are also delicious. So our soup will be tasty and good for us. And here we go. This is that golden brown stuff that we want to have in our soup because this is what gives soup such a good flavor. Now it's time to add spices. We'll start with salt and pepper, and then we're gonna add some herbs. So I'm adding sage, thyme, and oregano. Remember our homemade broth? Now is the perfect time to add just about a cup of it to the veggies. A cup of diced tomatoes, and of course a bay leaf. It already looks good enough to eat, and that caramelized stuff in the bottom is nicely blending with our soup. Now I'll prepare more broth for the rest of the soup. Bones should continue to cook. What I'm trying to get is that piece of meat we had on the bottom. Let's see if we can get that out. I've been cooking this broth for 2.5 hours, but my past experience tells me that the best bone broth comes at the 7th hour of cooking. It looks like the longer you cook it, the better it is. When boiled for a long time, bones release traces of minerals like calcium, potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus. Bone marrow is full of healthy fats and good proteins, as well as vitamin A and vitamin K2. And let's not forget the collagen. As you add the broth, you have option to just add whatever you can get out of the pot, including vegetables and particles of meat, or you can strain it like this. It's really up to you. You can also prepare the broth in advance. So if you do so, you'll be able to remove the fat, and you will be able to pre-plan this and have this ready to go when you're ready to make your soup. But what I'm doing right here, I'm just adding the broth as it is, and then I'm going to scoop the extra fat that will collect on the top of our soup. As you can see, the broth is really fatty. There's a lot of flavor there, but we don't want all this fat. So for now, I'm just going to pour it in, and then later I'll come back and I'll scoop it up. So what's left here, we're just going to bring the bones back into this pot, and we'll continue to cook them because there's still a lot of goodness left in them. We are getting closer to finishing our soup, so let's prep fresh garlic and fresh parsley. The meat is falling apart and it's absolutely delicious. But I want to show you something. You see this bottom part? This is where all the flavor is. We'll separate the rest of the meat from the bone and shred it in smaller pieces like this and just set it aside. This time, the meat is now going back to soup until soup is almost done. Okay, this is looking good, and now we are ready to add these additional vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, and mushrooms don't need more than 3 to 5 minutes of cooking. The vegetable base that we started with onions, celery, carrots, and green beans was already good enough. And then adding a very thick, rich broth, that alone makes a great soup. But by adding these vegetables, this is just going to bring more texture to our soup and obviously a lot more nutrition. I'm going to bring this back to boil, and I just added some fresh parsley, and I'm also adding the shredded beef. With this last step, now we're ready to turn the fire off, and we're gonna let the soup rest. It's very important that after you're done, you allow soup at least 15 minutes of resting before serving. While our soup is resting, I'm gonna lightly toast some homemade sourdough bread. This bread makes amazing grilled cheese. But today I'm trying to stay on a lighter side, and instead of making grilled cheese, I'm gonna lightly toast the bread and serve it with sliced avocados. But I promise that in one of our future episodes, I'm gonna show you how to make an amazing grilled cheese. Both of my kids and I are big foodies. With that said, it's very important to keep healthy and well-balanced diet. I hope you enjoyed making this soup with us today, because guess what? A good bowl of soup will never get out of style. This is our 4th episode in a series featuring New Zealand, and today we had a lot of fun learning about the Russell and its history. By sharing stories and traditions from various cultures, children learn to celebrate differences and embrace them. And that's just one of the things that we try to accomplish with our program Cooking and Kids. Our travels through New Zealand will continue, and I'm very excited to bring you more stories from this beautiful land. For now, we are back to our boat to get some rest and to enjoy this spectacular sailing race. In our next episode, I'm taking you to a very special place. We're going to Captain Cook's Cove, And our captain is going to show us how we're going to get there.
And you can see our path by the dashed lines. And we are going around the point, and we are going to sail over to Cook's Cove, where Cook landed 1780, roughly, give or take 10 years. And this is actually we're planning anchoring.
Okay, very
Motuaroa Island.
good. So where are we right now? So
Security, all stations.
okay.
This is maritime
So
radio.
this is right here.
Maritime radio. Telephone maritime radio.
Our next episode will be so much fun because this is one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. After doing some research, I found out exact date when Captain Cook landed in this cove, which is January 31st, 1770. This was his first voyage to New Zealand and one of the Cook's first encounters with the indigenous Maori people. I'm so excited to share more about this beautiful place with all of you in our next episode of Cooking and Kids. Ooh, there comes a big one! Should you ever decide to visit this place, you'll notice the waters are teeming with the wildlife. Encounters with dolphins, seals, penguins, and various species of fish are almost guaranteed. That's all for now. Greetings from Vlada and Vlada's Seeds of Life, and thank you all for watching and spending time with us. We'll see you again soon, and until then, please take good care of yourself and those around you.